Welcome, Jason, to The Root of Our Health. I am so happy to have you on this podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, well, it's all about you and what you're doing. So let's not waste anybody's time and just jump right in. So I'm kind of curious is your background and your story and how, most importantly, how you became the transformative coach.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long story and I don't want to get too much into the details for people, although I know stories are often inspiring. I think that the word transformative seems important because I spent my whole, let's go back a little bit, and kind of say that as a child, I lost my father in an accident. He went out one day and he was killed. He didn't come back. That was kind of the start, I guess, of the, what I didn't plan for, that's for sure. And, from there, my life spiraled downhill, into compulsive eating and psychiatric diagnoses at an early age, from a very young age, being thrown sort of in at the deep end, I guess, to the system, the psychological and psychiatric system, being kicked out of schools, being quite a unruly child and out of control, I guess my mum would have called me, from there progressing on to crime and addictions and just a life of oblivion and chaos, escaping from what looked like, I always say what looked like, because it really did look like at that time, what looked like having been born into this life that I didn't really want, and that I didn't really want it to be how it was. And I was a victim of the circumstances, particularly of the loss of my dad. And from then on, I was suffering from this unexplainable rebellion, against the system, against life, against everything that came my way, destined to live a life of misery and escapism. That's kind of how it looked and then I found drugs, and drugs were the solution. They were the solution to all those problems. All those problems went away in a moment. They just disintegrated into nothing. They didn't exist anymore. And so it made sense that I was going to do it again and again and again and again, and escape from that, So, even from the start, I always knew drugs were the solution. They weren't the problem. It's kind of but I was thrown into a system where drugs are the problem. And the way that they try and help you stop taking drugs is by giving you more drugs. It's like, don't take these drugs, take this one. It's like your body, newsflash, your body doesn't know the difference whether your pill came from the doctor or you bought it off the street. It's still an escape. It's still a point of oblivion. So, I was in that life of struggling with eating and drugs and crime and chaos, and I got clean. I went to rehabilitation when I was 23, which was 27 years ago today, actually, the day that I that I got clean, and which makes me 50, believe it or not.
Congratulations on that, first of all.
Yeah. But, coming back, it's a long answer to a short question, but coming back to the word transformative, it's like I spent a lifetime in the process of trying to transform and trying to change. I didn't know what transformation really meant. It just seemed like something that you did on the outside, or something that you had to achieve or get to through a series of practices, because I was innocently thrown into that system, the psychiatric psychological system, where people are broken, they get labels, they get diagnoses, they get long-term therapy or to deal with their issues, they get given a label of trauma or something like that, So I was always searching, for different and new and better ways to feel better. That's all I wanted. It's all I ever wanted, was to feel less pain, less suffering, more joy, more contentment, more happiness, more peace of mind, more freedom, and over time, I became successful on the outside. After I stopped taking drugs, my life got better on the outside, but got worse on the inside. My internal world It just makes sense, right? Because drugs were the solution. So when you take away the solution, your coping mechanism for thoughts and feelings and circumstances, if you take away your coping mechanism, it makes complete sense that your world gets worse because you've got no way of coping with all the things that you struggle with in the first place. So I did a lot of, I call it plaster on a bullet hole solutions. It's like I tried all sorts of things, including being in 2 decades in 12-step meetings, trained as a psychotherapist and multiple other modalities. I spent 10 years in therapy myself. I went to all Tony Robbins programs. I went to the Hoffman process, Landmark Forum. I had a long list of letters after my name, and kind of successful financially on the outside and struggling on the inside, So still looking for that ultimate transformation, that ultimate experience of finding more joy, contentment, happiness, peace of mind, less stress, less anxiety, less worry, less depression, less turmoil, in my own mind. And it always really looked like if I could just get this, it manifested itself in so many ways over the years, it's like the misunderstanding of how our world is created on the outside versus the inside, is the key to everything. And it really looked to me that if I could just get the right set of circumstances, on the outside in my world, if I could get the right relationship, if I could lose the right amount of weight, if I could just control my eating behavior, if I could stop getting into dysfunctional relationships, if I could earn more money, if I could have a better business, if I could get a better relationship with my family, the list was endless, and it really looked like I had to it's like spinning plates, right? And you've got about 50 plates. And it's like, if you can just get them all spinning perfectly at the same time, which seems like the most ludicrous idea to find peace of mind, right? If I can just get all these plates spinning at the right time, then and only then would I experience this elusive nirvana of inner peace, And it's like, even saying that now sounds ridiculous. I can't believe I actually believe that. And the funny thing is that most of humanity believe that too. Most of humanity really think that life is this race to go from being born to further and further and further education, understanding and progress and so on to get to this place, where you experience all the joy, contentment, peace of mind and happiness that you ever wanted through status, through success, through whatever it is, It's like, so, staying on the subject of transformative, it's kind of like, I tried everything, I literally had tried everything that I could come to, every new therapy I trained in, I went to, every new thing. I still really wasn't at peace. Even after I was a certified psychotherapist, I didn't feel in a position where I was able to really point people to what they wanted, because I knew what I wanted was peace of mind, happiness and contentment. And I also knew already at that point that was what everyone else wanted. And maybe they looked for it in the wrong places, but that was ultimately what they wanted, So I knew it wasn't about dealing with the past. I knew it was just about living life in the present moment. And after I'd done Tony Robbins, I came across the work of a coach called Michael Neal. He wrote quite a few books, but the main one being The Inside Out Revolution. And he had done a course on Hay House called The Path of Effortless Change. And I mean, there's just something about the name of that, even now today, when I think about it, the path of effortless change, it's kind of like my whole life had been an effort, it'd been difficult. It had been, everything had seemed like hard work, so something that was effortless was like really appealing to me, it was like, so the funny thing was that I didn't plan to watch this video. I only planned to share it with a group of people so they could watch it, and I had to screen record it to watch it, to pirate it, and I told Michael this story, it's quite funny experience of finding his work. But it was like, as I was pirating it, I found myself mesmerized by the content of this course, and I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something resonated, like a resonance, like a feeling inside of me of knowing that there's something more to discover in this, whatever this guy is talking about. My intellect didn't understand it, because quite often the word transformative or transformation is not understood by the intellect. It's more experienced, first, before it is understood how it came about. And that was sort of my discovery of Michael's work. A year later, a few things passed. I ended up at his house. I did a 2-day intensive in LA, and in those 2 days, transformation happened. My whole life looked completely different. All the years of struggle, all the years of suffering, all the years of escapism disintegrated. I became present. I woke up, to life as I know it today. I realized that I'd been lost in a story in my own mind for decades, and I'd also been escaping from this very story that I was lost in my own mind. And I went on to do a lot of training with Michael. I did Super Coach Academy and Super Coach Academy Advanced with Michael, and a lot of other trainings in that understanding that he shared, that's become the foundation of my work. And that's why I call it, it's a long explanation, but the word transformative, it's really just saying that we have conversations about how life looks and works, and they are transformative conversations. They're conversations that change lives, that people get to see themselves and the world around them in a different light. So long answer, short question.
No, thank you. And it was a wonderful answer. Thank you, first of all, for sharing, obviously your history and your story. Definitely something that's very traumatic in anybody's life. There's so much that I could, I'm thinking, like, my head is kind of going in like all these different directions, because, all of these questions that I have. The first one is, so working with Michael, that I'm assuming was your pivotal moment. So how did you, because I know that you were going through a lot of internal turmoil, right? Is this like, what made you decide to take that course? Like, was there something that was just like the final straw, or what was that? What does that look like?
It's an interesting thing, because it seems like that's a point where a lot of people are at, right? Kind of like, how do I know what's right for me? Or do I always make a change in my life because things have got really shitty? It's kind of like, is that how it works? And it's funny, because one of the first ever little bits of coaching that I did with Michael was about that, and he said to me, have you ever made a change in your life? And I said, well, yeah, loads. And he said, so what happened? So we went through all these things that happened, and he said, and why did you do that? Why did you make that change? And it was always like, well, because things had got shitty. That was the reason. Like I got clean from my drug addiction because it had got really bad. It was like that. And it's kind of like, or I left relationships because they'd got really bad. They were so dysfunctional and toxic and so on. And what we came to talk about is what happened to me is like the experience of listening to that video that day. There was something inside me that knew, like there was a deep, and as this is called the root of our health, that is what all my work is pointing to, is the root and the permanence and the undamageable, unbreakable mental health that is true for all human beings, at all times, no matter what diagnosis, no matter what you did, no matter how crazy you've been, and the resonance of that, like the hearing something beyond our own thinking about ourselves, beyond our own thinking about the story of me, the brokenness, all the stuff I've done, how bad I am, how I can never get this, how it doesn't look like I can change, all the self-deprecating messages that we have. It's like I heard something in what Michael said that I didn't quite understand, but I had that deeper knowing, and people may reconcile this in a way that the most common one is we've all had a relationship that we either knew at the start it was wrong for us or it was right for us. You know, we've all had that. We all got into a relationship and we went, I know something's not right about this. You know, it's kind of like, and at the end, when it all goes wrong, we say, I knew from the start that it wasn't right. You know, that's the knowing that I'm talking about, right? That's the knowing that I had when I listened to Michael. It was like something beyond words that could be explained, but just a deep sense of intuition, you know. And that's kind of like, that was the moment really that you know, that sort of led me in that direction, that deep sense of knowing beyond intellectual reconciliation, beyond the ability to make sense of it in my mind. Oh, this makes sense because it looks like this, and this. It wasn't that. It was a deep sense of like, whatever this is, I need to explore it more, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. No, that makes perfect sense. So I also heard in when you were going through the story of um how you were doing all the right things, right? But it felt you were doing all of the right things on the outside, but it felt horrible on the inside. So to me, that sounds like we would have to sit through the pain, you know, the pain of life itself or the struggle of life itself. Do you think that, I don't know if you know teach your clients this, but do you think that you have to go through struggle in order to find, I don't want to say happiness, but like find true life at the end? Is there like a struggle and happiness kind of go together?
It's a great question. And it's like, you know, like all life is ever doing is pointing us home, you know, that's it. And it's kind of like when we have a, let's call it a distorted perception of the outside world created in our own mind, you know, it's kind of like, because it always is 100% of the time, our experience is created within ourselves. You know, there's always two things, you know, taking trauma as an example, you know, there's the event, there's what happened, and then there's what I made it mean, you know, and there's those two things at play in all circumstances, in all life. Every moment of every day that you're awake, there's what happens, what people say, what happens, what goes on around you, and there's what you make it mean, you know, and that's what's always going on here. And like, so it really looked like life circumstances were the thing to escape from, you know, and that's kind of like the fundamental misunderstanding. It's that life, if I'm struggling with a life circumstance, it really is today, it is, you could call it a love letter from the soul, or you could call it an indicator or an alarm clock or a red flag or a warning or a pointer, you know, to say that I'm creating something in my own mind about the life around me, you know, using my thinking innocently to make it look bad, you know, because life is just happening all the time. Every event, every circumstance, every experience is neutral. And we get to play the role of the creator of the experience that we have for everything, you know. And at the time back then, it really looked like the only reasons that I made changes were because life got really shitty, you know. But now it's kind of like if I'm having a difficult or a turmoil or torment about something, you know, it's kind of like, or a struggle with something, it really is an indicator for me to look inwardly, you know, and say, well, what is it that I believe about this? What is it that I make up about this? What is it that I see about this? And so on, you know, it's kind of like, so it's really looking inwardly at all points, at all times for the solution and not outwardly to the circumstances of life as I used to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a beautiful way to say it. You know, it's what we think, or we have the ability to control our own minds and how we react, right? So to circumstances. So it's basically like, do we want to struggle? Do we not want to struggle? Like, how do we want to show up, right? So yeah, you explained it perfectly.
Mm.
Um, I want to kind of get in a little bit more of what you do with your clients. So question that I had was, or is, you know, what is the most challenging thing that you see with your clients when you go through your sessions? what comes up, like if you see like a consistent challenge that they go through in your session, what would that one challenge be?
It doesn't change, it's the same for every single person. It could be an entrepreneur making a £1 million, a £1 billion business decision. It could be somebody who comes with a compulsion to eat every day, or to take drugs or gamble or something like that. And anywhere in between, somebody who struggles with anxiety. The challenge that they have, doesn't change. And the challenge is to see that their world is for every person, for every human being, because it's like, if you take the example of, if a fish is born in water and never leaves the water, does it know it's swimming in water? It's kind of like, and like, that could be a throwaway comment, but if you really sit and reflect with that, it's kind of like, is there any water to that fish? It's like, and that's in the same way that humans live in a world of thought, that they live in a made up movie going on in their own mind, where they play the lead character in the movie, and they become overly, the ego is an over identification with the lead character in the movie. And it really looks like that all these things that we're doing in the world and everything around us supports that. The world of personal development supports that, therapy supports that, it all supports this. It's all in service of the lead character of the role, the lead character playing the role of you in the movie. That's what it's in service of. So it's like the whole world, so to speak, as we know it on the outside, is kind of created in our own mind and experienced in our own mind. There's nothing really going on without it being in our own mind. And that's like why I relate this to, does a fish know it's swimming in water? Because people really struggle to see that their world is made of thought sometimes, because thought looks really compelling. The lead character, the role of the lead character in the movie looks real. The status that they've got, the improvement, the brokenness that they get from the psychological and psychiatric world is all confirmed by well-educated, like people and societies and systems that have all been built around, and that we've been conditioned to believe, it's who we really are, but how could we be anything other than perfect? I mean, we're born with perfect mental health, and it's like we're born of the spiritual intelligence behind life, and then we are taught separation. We're taught separateness, in our experience. You get a name. That's the first thing you get, a name. I can identify myself versus you because we've got names. We're separate, it's kind of like, and then mine and yours. This is mine, that's yours. You don't touch mine, I don't touch yours. And this is my house and that's your house. And then society, and then the development of the illusory self, it's kind of like everything is in service of that, getting more, finding more. And this imaginary destination, that somebody gets to this imaginary destination, that people live their whole life in service of something, like, oh, when I get this business off the ground, when I get this money, it's kind of like, and so on. And they wake up at 50 or 60 and their life is gone, it's kind of like, it's past, it's already, their kids have grown up, like life is happening right now, in the moment, and like people don't see that, they're lost in their illusion of themselves, and I say that's the biggest challenge, because when people get just the smallest glimpse of that being true, like they stop thinking, no, that isn't true, or what, that just, the main one for people is, yeah, and what's the point of that? It's kind of like, well, it's funny how you can give somebody a life-changing snippet of information and they just don't think it's, I mean, that just sounds kind of conflicting, right? That they don't really see the value of that. And that's not a challenge for me, because I love the experience of people getting a glimpse of that, and they start to question about their life and who they are and all the things that are going on around them. But that certainly is, I mean, if it was easier to point people to that, certainly it would lead to more dramatical and substantial changes in the world around us, because this is the cause of wars, it's the cause of country borders, it's the cause of all government, all the stuff that goes on is the fact that people are lost in their, their world of thought that they don't know that they live in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And interesting that you say that, because right now, personally, I'm doing what's called a gratitude challenge. So gratitude, I find, wakes up or puts things into perspective. When we are grateful for what we have, or what even the smallest little thing that happened, like drinking coffee, we're grateful because this person roasted the bean, all of that stuff. But to your point, where people are all in our heads, like, I want, I'm not good enough until X, Y, and Z, right? Or we're always striving for more. We're always looking for more. We're always external, like, it's never enough for us. And I know you're in a different country, but America is like so consumed with that. So as of today, it's the third day of the challenge. I have I am grateful for the abundance in my life. So what I have already, I'm grateful for, because yeah, I have a roof over my head. I have food in the fridge. I have clothes. Like, there's so many people that do not have it. So when you are in an awareness of that, and your thought changes, like, okay, well, yes, sure, I worked hard for it. But at the same time, I deserve it. And it's more or less like thinking of a positive thought of, sure, I want to strive for more, but look at what I have. Look at what I have now. Be in the present, what we already have in abundance. And then you start to question, well, do I really need it? Do I really need all of this stuff? So it's a good, way to change the thought pattern. And that's, like, of course, the easiest, run of, because I know there's so many people dealing with anxiety, so many people dealing with just in general, of their thoughts kind of ruminating of either negative or just worry, all of this stuff. So, question on that, because I heard you talk about eating disorders, and personally, that's again something that I have gone through, and still kind of. I know that I have the thoughts of restrictive eating and all of that, all of that. So what is something, and again, my audience is women over 40 mainly. So I know that we deal a lot with body dysmorphia, especially when we get older, and eating disorders because of that body dysmorphia. But I'm wondering, is there anything, one tool or maybe one thing that you can give us in terms of a tip on, I don't want to say how to definitely, because it takes a long time to get over or kind of get through, and but what is one thing that you could tell us that will help us on our way to recovery, or at least to seek recovery?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that comes to mind is that, like, is going back to the love letters or the warnings or the alarm clocks. It's kind of like the labels that Western psychology has come up with for sets of behaviors. It's kind of like, let's look at this. It's kind of like, so as a human being, we have an experience of the body, right? We have bodily sensations along with thinking, and then perhaps behavioral actions, right? So we go to a professional, and they give us, and we tell them all these things. So this is what's happening. This is how my thinking is going. And here's how I feel in my body. And sometimes I do this too, it's not, and they go, oh, I know what that is, that is, and they give you a label, right? That's what happens. And then you kind of sometimes feel somewhat relieved. Oh, now I know, it's kind of like that. That's what's wrong with me. And then we go away. And here's how we perpetuate the story, right? We start saying we have the same experience of the thoughts, feelings, behaviors. And then we say, oh, I do that because I've got this thing, whatever it's called, borderline personality disorder, general anxiety disorder, substance use disorder. insert the word that we're given by the professional, right? Well, that just makes absolutely no sense. And here's why. It's because all that is a label, a conceptual label. There's no such thing. There's no test. There's no proof. There's no medical evidence. It is just a description. So how can a description of a set of behaviors be the cause of the behavior, right? And that's where most people become lost, that they start attributing the experience that they're having to the label that they've been given, and then they perpetuate it innocently themselves. They think that they've got this thing called, whatever it's called. So what I'm trying to do here in answer to your question is say that the anxiety, the body dysmorphia, the eating disorder, they're all labels, and none of them are the place to look. You can't control your food. You can't take medication for your anxiety and solve it. You can't do a set of practices. Okay, yeah, if you're having an anxiety attack, it may make sense to breathe more deeply, to feel your feet on the floor, to phone somebody and get yourself grounded back in the moment, because your body is having a sensation, a reaction to cortisol that you're creating with your own mind. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is that those things, they're never the place to look. Here's the tip, right? They're never the place to look. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You don't have, anxiety is the experience that you're having. It's not who you are. An eating disorder, it's the indicator that there's something going on in your own mind, and food is a coping mechanism. Now, all of those things are actually the same thing. They are all an indicator that we're innocently creating something to look shitty in our life, in our own mind, using thought, and it looks really real and compelling to us. And one more thing came to mind about that. Let me think what it was. That's it. Here's why that makes complete sense, right? The body, system of the body, right? It's kind of like, it's a self-healing system. The body mind is a system. It's all one. It's all part of the same. It's not like the mind is completely separate to the body. The body was built with a self-healing, in every way. Imagine you cut your finger wide open and you leave it alone. A week later, you can't even see the cut. It's gone. The skin is healed. It's not even, okay, yeah, if there's a really deep wound or something, you see something, but pretty much it's healed, right? It doesn't make sense that the mind wouldn't heal itself too. It's kind of like, oh, the mind, yeah, you have to fix that. You've got to get professional help, but the rest of the body, that fixes itself. It doesn't seem like common sense. So when you see that all you can ever do is take yourself away from your well-being, that your mind heals itself with no input from you, all you have to do is stop. Let's use the analogy of a snow globe. I wish I had one, but it's kind of like, if you keep shaking it like this, i.e. using your own thinking to try and fix what you think is broken about yourself, it's just going to be really messy. And all you have to do is put it down and it just settles like that. And how you can see that that's true is most people, in fact, all people have the experience of, seeing this in one of a few ways. One is they go to bed with a problem, feeling really stressed. They wake up in the morning, it's gone. Okay, what happened in the night? They just didn't think about it. They just had space from their own mind. Another one could be that, something happens, divine intervention, it's kind of like there's something that you don't know how to resolve, something going on. It's kind of like something happens and it all changes. It's kind of like there's the experience of those things happening all the time. When you just go outside in nature, why do many people go for a walk, when they're really stressed and stuff like that? Because they get outside into nature, into the oneness of life, into the beauty of the world, and their own mind settles down, their own thinking about themselves, and all of a sudden they feel better, and they say, oh yeah, I feel better in nature. Well, it's not the nature making you feel better, but it's actually the fact that you're leaving your own thinking alone for a period of time. And actually then you notice what happens in those experiences is your mood lifts, you feel better, you feel more happy, more content, more joyful, the things that you want, and the problem that you had seems less important. So I hope in all that, it's a long explanation of a tip, but it's kind of like, if you see that, you know, if you don't look to the eating disorder, to the anxiety, to the labels that you've been given as a problem to fix, you know, you see them as a love letter from the soul. You see that all you have to do is put the snow globe down, you know, like, and then you will feel better, because the system is designed in a way that it fixes itself. It's like a cork underwater, you know, it's like when you let go of holding it underwater, it floats back to the top by itself. There's nothing you need to do to help it back to the top or make it float again. It just floats in the same way that we are just content when we stop trying to fix ourselves, you know?
Beautiful. Yeah, I love the analogies. I can definitely relate to that. And it is kind of, again, settling our mind, like settling, like let it be, right? Just let it be. Let's not kind of overthink things. Let's not have it, you know, like the chatter going on. When it quiets down and settles down, I think that's where the magic happens. So thank you for explaining that. That was wonderful. So Jason, we are at the time. I want to respect your time as well. And I just want to know where people can find you, follow you, and also, you know, reach out to you if they want any more help.
Yeah. If people want to hear more about what I'm talking about, you know, there's my podcast is called misunderstandingtothemind.com. And you can find it on Spotify, on iTunes. And it's really just transformative conversations, you know, where we started. It's I interview people. It's always interview someone else, and we talk about so many different subjects, about connection, about relationships, about anxiety, about eating, addiction, you know, so many different things on there. And it's, if you feel called to do so, you know, if it makes sense to you, if you feel intuitively drawn to hear more about what I'm talking about, then that's always a good place to hear more. And that's connected to my website, which is wideworldcoaching.com. So I'm always open to speaking to anybody if they want to have a conversation with me, for sure.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. I'll link all of that in the show notes so they can just click and go.
Yeah.
Before I ask the last question, Jason, I want to acknowledge you. Not, you know, what you are doing in this world, and that's why I reached out to you, is because mental health is such an important thing that we have to, you know, have in our daily lives. We have to understand it. We have to get over the stigma of, you know, the fact that we do need mental health and we do need help with overcoming and with seeing that we have the ability to overcome whatever, again, you know, the symptoms are, you know, labels are, that we have the ability to shift our mindset, and you bring it out in people and help others to do that. So I want to acknowledge you for being you know, for doing what you're doing in this world. So thank you.
Thank you.
So the last question that I have is, what is your favorite quote, or what, if you have a word of wisdom or inspiration?
There's a quote by Sid Banks, and he says that every human being is sitting in the middle of mental health and they just don't know it. You know, and that's kind of pretty much it sums up what I've been talking about here today, you know, and talks to what, you know, what you just talked about with the mental health stuff. And you know, I just love that, because it really is, it's so simple, you know, that it's kind of unbelievable, you know, for most of humanity that could be true. But actually, you know, all the answers are actually simple, you know, and that's kind of where I would, you know, that quote I know has made a difference in a lot of people's lives, you know, just by seeing the profundity of, like, the simplicity in what he says, you know.
Thank you. That was beautiful. That sums it all up, like you said, the bow. Well, thank you so much, Jason, for being on this show. You know, I can't wait to follow you and get to, you know, get my audience to follow you as well. So thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you.
All right. Until next time.